Get out. Go take your little computer games and get out of my office." My father's voice boomed over the mechanical hum of the loading dock, shaking the thin walls of the dispatch booth. He stood over me, his face flushed a deep, angry red, pointing a grease-stained finger toward the exit. Outside, forklifts beeped and diesel engines idled, the sounds of what he called real work. Inside, the air conditioner rattled, struggling against the Savannah heat. "You are a distraction, Audrey," he shouted, slamming his hand on the desk next to my open laptop. "I have drivers threatening to quit, shipments missing, and you are sitting here playing on the internet. I told you, if you want to be part of this family, you pick up a clipboard and you sweat like the rest of us. If you want to play pretend with your little screen, go do it on the street." I did not flinch. I did not try to explain that the internet games he despised were actually me patching a critical vulnerability in his server that would have leaked all his driver data within the hour. I had just saved legacy logistics from a massive lawsuit, but all Dennis saw was his daughter typing while sitting down. I simply closed the laptop. The screen clicked shut, silencing the only thing in that building that was actually generating value. "Fine," I said. My voice was steady, barely a whisper against the noise of the warehouse. I stood up, picked up my bag, and walked past him. I did not look back at the peeling paint on the walls or the frantic dispatchers trying to route trucks on outdated software. I walked out into the blinding Georgia sun, got into my car, and drove away. He thought he was kicking out a lazy child. He did not know he had just fired the only person capable of saving him. Before I tell you how I ended up owning the very building he threw me out of, drop a comment below. Have you ever been the black sheep of your family just because you do things differently? Let me know your story. I drove through the humid streets of Savannah, where the Spanish moss hangs heavy from the oaks like old, dusty curtains. This city is beautiful, but it is built on appearances. In my family circle, reputation is the only currency that matters. You have to be seen to be respected. You need the country club membership, the frantic schedule, and the visible stress that proves you are important. My father, Dennis, believed in the god of manual labor. If your hands were not dirty, your money was not real. He owned Legacy Logistics, a trucking hub that had been bleeding cash for 5 years because he refused to modernize. To him, I was a ghost. I worked in cybersecurity, consulting for Fortune 500 companies and securing global networks from my living room. But because I did not have a commute, a boss, or a uniform, my parents decided I was unemployed. My mother, Pamela, was not much better. She was a socialite who treated motherhood like a public relations campaign. Her pride and joy was my younger sister, Jessica. At 27, Jessica was a pharmaceutical sales representative. She drove a leased luxury sedan, wore tailored suits, and constantly complained about how busy she was. She was the perfect daughter because her struggle was visible. She would rush into Sunday dinners, breathless, talking about client lunches and quota pressures, and my parents would beam. They loved her stress. It validated them. They did not know that Jessica was drowning in credit card debt just to maintain that image. They did not know her company car was 2 months behind on payments. And they certainly did not know that the quiet daughter, the one they thought was scraping by on internet scams, had invoiced $28,000 that morning before breakfast. It is a strange phenomenon, this invisible labor paradox. There is a generation of people, like my parents, who simply cannot respect what they cannot see. To them, typing is not labor, it is leisure. They see me sitting with a coffee and a screen, and their brains register it as downtime. They value the performance of work, the suit, the sweat, the exhaustion, more than the result of the work. I used to try to explain it. I used to show them my contracts, my bank statements. But they would just glance at the numbers and ask when I was going to get a real job with benefits. So I stopped trying. I let them have their narrative. I became the ghost they believed I was. I bought a historic townhouse downtown, paid for in cash, but I never invited them over. I told them I was renting a small apartment. I let them believe I was struggling because it made them feel superior, and a superior enemy is a careless enemy. That drive away from the warehouse was the beginning of the end, but the cracks had started showing 3 months earlier. I remember it clearly. It was a Tuesday, and I was analyzing a threat report for a bank in Zurich when my phone buzzed. It was an alert I had set up years ago on the public filings for my dad's company. Legacy Logistics had missed a payroll tax deadline. They were $45,000 in the red and facing a liquidity crisis. If they did not pay by Friday, the state would freeze their accounts, and the trucks would stop rolling. I stared at the notification. I could have let it burn. God knows they would have let me burn if the roles were reversed. But there were 50 drivers who worked for my dad, men and women with families who did not deserve to lose their paychecks just because Dennis was too stubborn to upgrade his billing system. I did not call him. I did not offer help. I knew he would never accept money from his failure of a daughter. Instead, I opened a shell company I used for anonymous transactions. I drafted a bridge loan agreement disguised as an angel investment from a holding firm in Atlanta. I wired $45,000 directly to the company's operating account with a note to ensure continuity of operations. I saved them. I pulled them back from the ledge without them ever knowing my name was on the receipt. That weekend, we had one of our mandatory family dinners. My mother had set the table with the good china, the kind she usually saved for the mayor or the pastor. There was a palpable sense of relief in the air, a lightness I had not seen in the house for years. Dennis stood up to make a toast, holding a glass of cheap wine like it was vintage champagne. "I want to make a special toast tonight," he said, puffing out his chest. "To family, and specifically to Jessica." I froze, my fork hovering halfway to my mouth. Jessica sat across from me, looking confusingly smug. My dad continued, "We were in a tight spot this week. A very tight spot. But thanks to Jessica's connections in Atlanta, we secured a private investment that is going to keep us moving forward." She made some calls, pulled some strings, and saved the business. He beamed at her. My mother reached over and squeezed Jessica's hand, eyes glistening with tears. "Oh, stop," Jessica said, waving her hand dismissively, though she was clearly basking in the glow. "I just made a few introductions, Dad. I knew people who were looking for solid opportunities. I am just glad I could help." The lie hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Jessica had not made any calls. She did not know anyone in Atlanta finance. She barely knew how to balance her own checkbook. She was taking credit for my money, for my rescue, and she was doing it without blinking. In the past, I would have slammed my hand on the table. I would have pulled up the wire transfer on my phone and shoved it in their faces. I would have screamed, "I did this. Me, the useless one." But I did not. I took a sip of water and employed a technique I had learned called the gray rock method. It is a psychological defense strategy used when dealing with toxic, narcissistic personalities. The idea is simple. You become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a gray rock. You deny them the emotional reaction they crave. If I had screamed, I would have given them a story. I would have been the jealous sister trying to steal Jessica's moment. They would have called me crazy. They would have defended her lies, just to spite me. By reacting, I would have validated them. By doing nothing, I kept the power. "That is wonderful, Jessica," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of sarcasm or warmth. Just a statement of fact. I am glad it worked out. My dad sneered at me, disappointed by my lack of awe. "You could learn something from your sister, Audrey. She understands that business is about relationships. It is about stepping up when the family needs you." I nodded slowly. "You are right, Dad. It is absolutely about stepping up." I finished my meal in silence, watching them celebrate a victory that belonged to me. I watched Jessica preen and accept their praise, building her pedestal higher and higher. I realized then that I was not part of this family. I was just a resource they had not figured out how to strip mine yet. Or so I thought. I did not know it then, but my silence that night was the most dangerous thing I could have given them. It made them comfortable. It made them think I was blind, weak, and submissive. And because they thought I was weak, they got sloppy. 2 weeks after the dinner, the other shoe dropped. It started with a vibration on my wrist. My smartwatch buzzed, a frantic, persistent rhythm that usually meant a server breach or a critical system failure for a client. I was in my home office, surrounded by the soft hum of my cooling systems, a cup of tea steaming on the desk. I glanced at the notification, expecting a code read from a bank in London or a tech firm in Tokyo. It was not a client. It was a fraud alert from a bank I had not thought about in 10 years. When I was 18, my grandmother passed away. She was the only person in the family who saw me, really saw me. She left me a small custodial account, intended for a rainy day. I had never touched it. I had forgotten it existed, leaving it to accrue interest as a silent memorial to her. The alert flashed on my screen. Withdrawal. $22,500. Balance, 0. I stared at the numbers, the blue light of the monitor reflecting in my eyes. My first thought was a hacker. I am a cybersecurity consultant. I deal with digital theft every day. I know the patterns. But when I pulled up the transaction details, the metadata was wrong. It was not a digital transfer. It was an in-branch withdrawal, a cashier's check. I picked up the phone and called the branch manager, a woman I had gone to high school with. "Hey, Audrey," she said, sounding relieved to hear my voice. "I am glad you called. I just wanted to double-check that transaction. Your mom seemed really stressed when she came in. She said it was a medical emergency." My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. "My mom, Pamela, did she have authorization?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "Well, she is listed as the custodian from when you were a minor," the manager said, hesitation creeping into her voice. "She said you two spoke about it this morning." She signed the withdrawal slip. She said your dad was in trouble." I hung up. I did not scream. I did not throw the phone. I sat in the silence of my office and felt the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. They had stolen from me. They had not asked. They had not begged. They had walked into a bank, looked an old friend in the eye, and lied to steal the last thing my grandmother had given me. If my father was in trouble, if the business was failing again, I might have understood. I would not have liked it, but I would have understood the desperation of survival. But I am a researcher. I do not guess, I verify. I opened my laptop and went to the place where people tell on themselves every single day, social media. I did not have to dig deep. I went to Jessica's profile, and there it was, posted 2 hours ago. A photo of Jessica and her fiancé standing in front of the Forsyth Park mansion, the most exclusive, expensive wedding venue in Savannah. It is a place where old money goes to show off, a place that requires a massive down payment just to hold a date. The caption read, "So excited to announce we have officially booked our dream venue. It took a miracle, but we made it happen. #blessed #dream wedding." I cross-referenced the venue's booking fees. The required deposit for a Saturday in June. Exactly $22,500. The air left my lungs. It was not a medical emergency. It was not a business crisis. My mother had committed fraud, forged a signature, and stolen my savings to pay for a party. They had looted my grandmother's legacy to fund Jessica's vanity. In that moment, the last tether snapped. The bond that connects a child to their parents, the instinctive desire to protect them, to forgive them, to hope for them, it severed. It did not hurt. It actually felt like relief. I finally understood the truth. These people who shared my last name were not my family. They were parasites, draining anything they could reach. And parasites are not negotiated with, they're removed. I could have gone to the police. Theft, fraud. There were more than enough grounds for an arrest. My mother would have been publicly disgraced within days. But that was too simple and far too merciful. If she went to jail, she twisted into martyrdom. I'd become the ungrateful daughter who destroyed her loving mother over money. No, I wanted something complete, something irreversible. A strategy from the art of war came to mind, one I often used in cybersecurity. The highest victory is winning without open conflict. You don't strike the enemy's strength. You dismantle the foundation they stand on. I needed to control the battlefield. I dug into public records for legacy logistics, the family business I had quietly kept alive with a bridge loan. That money was gone, burned through by incompetence. They were defaulting again, and the bank was preparing to foreclose. My father was effectively bankrupt, though he hadn't realized it yet. So I made a call, not to them, but to my attorney. "I want to buy a debt," I said. Legacy logistics debt. The bank was eager to offload it, and I instructed my lawyer to offer 60 cents on the dollar through a shell company. No paperwork, was to carry my name. Close it within 48 hours. This wasn't revenge. Revenge is emotional. This was a business correction, a failing asset returning to competent hands. I watched them over the next 2 days. My mother posted floral arrangements online, oblivious that she was about to lose her house. My father barked orders at his drivers, unaware that I was negotiating ownership of everything he believed he controlled. They were planning a wedding. I was planning an eviction. When the final email came through, confirming the transfer of the debt, I felt a strange, clean calm. In that moment, I owned their warehouse, their trucks, and, by my father's own signature, their home. I invited them to dinner at the old pink house. They arrived expecting generosity. I arrived with a manila folder. First came the bank withdrawal, the exact $22,500 my mother had taken. Then the screenshot linking it directly to Jessica's wedding deposit. Their excuses evaporated. Their fury rose. My father slammed the table, claiming the money was family money. I let him finish. Then I told him the truth. I'm not auditing you. I'm foreclosing. When he realized Helios Holdings LLC, the new creditor, was me, the fight drained out of him. My mother shrieked that I couldn't do this. Jessica stared at her plate. But I could, and I did. They had 30 days to vacate. The locks at the warehouse were already changed. Afterward, their collapse was quiet. The business dissolved. The assets were sold. The wedding was canceled. I recovered every stolen cent. And for the first time in my life, the silence around me felt like peace, not absence. It felt like freedom.